4 years ago, I did the unthinkable. I watched a bunch of episodes of Saturday Night Live and then made a video about it. SNL is about to wrap up its 50th season, which is pretty crazy to think about when you consider how much pop culture has evolved in the past few decades. I think it's a testament to how many talented people have worked in that building that they're still finding ways to stay relevant today. I mean, even in 2025, at a time when nobody watches anything live anymore, they managed to pull almost 15 million viewers for their anniversary episode. Adjusted for inflation, that's over 2 billion people. Because this is such an important milestone for the show, and because I only ever have like 4 different video ideas, I wanted to do another retrospective. The problem is I already watched every single season of the show for that last video, so like, what else is there to talk about? And then I remembered, oh yeah, they made 11 movies. Some that I haven't seen since I was a kid, some that I've never heard of, and some that live in infamy for the harm they caused to anyone who had the misfortune of going to see them. I have a lot of reviews to get to, so we should probably start as soon as possible. The first ever SNL-inspired movie was The Blues Brothers in 1980, released right in between a time when the show was the most popular it would ever be, and then so bad that it almost got canceled. The Blues Brothers were played by Dan Aykroyd and the late John Belushi, who tragically died while filming this stunt. Now I'm gonna assume that was someone else, but like, is that guy okay? Holy shit, that looked painful. I have to imagine the only reason he didn't break any ribs is because of all the cocaine that everyone was doing the entire time this movie was being filmed. So much cocaine, they had to program it into the budget. So many on-hand substances that it became nearly impossible to wrangle up John Belushi at his call time because he'd either be hungover or just like in somebody's house. The production of this movie is wild to read about. There was a drug empire on set. They went $10 million over budget. They set the world record for most cars destroyed while filming a movie. And in spite of all that, it was a huge success. People loved it. They made a bunch of money. And now that I've finally seen it for the first time, I can confidently say, yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's fitting that the story of this movie cannot be told without mentioning its heavy cocaine use, because the movie itself feels like a product of it. Every gag is so over the top. They spared no expense when it came to pulling off a joke, and honestly, I don't think the movie would have worked if they did. If they half-assed any of the production on here, a lot of the bits wouldn't have been that memorable. But they worked because of the lengths they went to sell it. Like this chase scene that ends with a car flying off a bridge isn't that funny on its own, but when they send that car a mile into the air and show it falling so far down from 10 different angles, now it's hilarious. Apparently they had to get military clearance so they could drop this from a helicopter. Was everybody on drugs back then? Earlier in that scene, the entire Chicago police force is chasing after them because of minor tax fraud, and there's a part where a comical amount of cop cars start piling on top of each other, just one after the other. It's ridiculous. And then there's this dance scene with random cuts to guys flipping like 20 feet in the air. The highlight of the movie for me though was this car chase through a mall and how casual they're being while causing such a ridiculous amount of damage.
This place has got everything. Lots of space in this mall.
How hell-bent these cops are on absolutely destroying this mall just to try and catch up to 2 people who ran a red light.
They broke my watch.
I would actually describe a lot of the humor in this movie as people acting nonchalant while something insane happens. And you know what? It's pretty funny every time.
There's got to be at least $7 worth of change here.
I think the movie has a good mix of absurdity, but also this patience to let scenes breathe. There's a dryness to the movie I didn't expect going into it, because the only thing I knew about the Blues Brothers as a bit was that they kind of dance in a funny way. So whether it's fair or not, I didn't expect this movie to be filled with so many well-written, deadpan one-liners.
How often does a train go by? So often you won't even notice it.
Are you the police?
No, ma'am. We're musicians.
Use of unnecessary violence in the apprehension of the Blues Brothers has been approved.
There's also so many cameos in this movie that make it an incredible time capsule to witness. Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, James Brown, they even got guitarist Matt Murphy to play Matt Guitar Murphy. But the movie isn't making fun of any of this music, it's celebrating it in a very earnest way. You can tell this entire bit just comes from their appreciation for blues music, and that's pretty cool. Also, some of the music is nostalgic for me because they used it in SpongeBob. The movie's fatal flaw, in my opinion, is just that it's way too long. There were definitely some scenes that didn't really go anywhere. Might have been one too many antagonists. Can't say I fully understood the whole Illinois Nazi subplot, but that might have just been because every time this guy came on screen, I couldn't stop thinking, is that the leprechaun grandpa from The Luck of the Irish? What an interesting career he had. From everything I've read, I don't think it would be possible for me to overstate the cultural impact that the Blues Brothers had at this time. Not just on SNL, not just in this movie, but also just as a band. They recorded an album that sold almost 4 million copies. That's insane. It's one of the best-selling blues records of all time, and at its core, it's just a couple of guys goofing off. Hey, speaking of a couple of guys goofing off, the next SNL movie was Wayne's World, one of many early 90s entries into the two dumb guys go on a little adventure genre. It's crazy to me that this was Mike Myers' first ever appearance in a movie. His very first at-bat, and he's already hitting a home run. In a movie he wrote about a character he created. It was by far the most financially successful SNL spinoff ever made. I wouldn't argue with you if you said it was the best SNL spinoff ever made, and it was definitely a vital first step for him to go on to having the career that he did. All of that said, I don't think this movie would be nearly what it was without Dana Carvey's performance. He adds so much to the film by constantly just doing his own thing while other stuff is happening. I don't know exactly what Garth's deal is, but I'm into it. The energy he brings does such a great job of complementing the rest of the cast, especially Wayne. It just works so much better as a duo.
My name is Wayne, and this is Garth.
And it was so interesting for me to find out that their dynamic, which is so crucial to the success of the film, almost never happened. Mike never wanted Dana to be in the movie because he was threatened by his star power, which I know in hindsight is kind of funny because of the opposite directions each of their careers went in. But at the time, Dana was the most popular cast member on SNL, and Mike was worried about being overshadowed. He tried everything he could to diminish that character so he could be the focal point, and it almost caused Dana to quit the movie. And there was this animosity between them that continued for years. One of the biggest points of contention being the way Dr. Evil, who Mike wrote into the Austin Powers movies, was kind of a blatant ripoff of an impression of Lorne Michaels that Dana used to do privately at SNL, even down to the pinky. So I kind of understand from Dana's point of view the sense of resentment he might feel to see someone else take his impression and use it to make $1 billion while his own career crashes and burns. Sorry, I know that's a bit of a tangent. I just thought it was interesting, especially because you wouldn't pick up on any of that just by watching this movie. Wayne's World easily made the smoothest transition from sketch to movie. It doesn't just feel like a skit that's been stretched out to 90 minutes, but an expansion into the universe that the sketches take place inside of. Great casting choices, so many memorable lines and moments, and even though it's just this fun, dumb movie, I think where it really shines is where it subverts that. I love when one of the characters that spent its entire on-screen existence being an idiot suddenly whips out this surprisingly articulate monologue.
Crimes and misdemeanors. I thought it wasn't so much a movie as it was an essay of man in society. Although the topic of free will versus determinism is fascinating, I would hardly call it entertainment. Garth?
Suck!
There's just something about this that makes me laugh every time. It's why my favorite scene in the whole movie is when they go backstage to meet Alice Cooper, and this is how the conversation goes.
Come to Milwaukee often?
Well, I'm a regular visitor here, but Milwaukee has certainly had its share of visitors. The French missionaries and explorers were coming here as early as the late 1600s to trade with the Native Americans.
In fact, isn't Milwaukee an Indian name?
Yes, Pete, it is.
This movie's jam-packed with bit after bit, and I love how positive it feels to watch. There's no cynicism to it whatsoever. It's just a good time. Wayne's World made more money than anyone involved could have possibly imagined, and so they followed it up with a sequel the next year. Would they manage to catch lightning in a bottle twice? No, second one's not that good. Really just diminishing returns on the whole formula. There's still a few great bits. Chris Farley has a bigger role, and he's fantastic. Garth is still firing on all cylinders.
So, Garth, would you like to have dinner some night?
Oh, I like to have dinner every night.
The biggest downfall here is that the plot is just not interesting at all. Where the first movie is centered around this fear of selling out and losing your identity in the process, an idea that still carries a lot of relevance today, Wayne's World 2 is just about getting some bands to show up to a music festival. And a couple of the recurring bits aren't even funny the first time they happen, let alone the fifth. If you don't like meta jokes and characters constantly breaking the fourth wall, these are not the movies for you, as that is a big chunk of the humor in them. But if you're into that, I think you can have a good time watching these, even if you're a little too young to understand most of the references. With 2 incredibly successful forays into the world of film under his belt, Lorne Michaels now had the blueprint laid out in front of him. Take beloved characters out of the constraints of the show, drop them into the real world, and start printing money. So what are we thinking for the next one? Church Lady, Matt Foley. What the fuck is Coneheads?
Great question, Drew. Coneheads are an alien family stranded on Earth where they must learn to assimilate themselves until they're able to return to their home planet. But why are they called Coneheads? Great question, Drew. It's because their heads are shaped like cones.
I think the most confusing thing about this movie is that they put so much money into it, clearly assuming that it would have the same wide appeal as Wayne's World, and it absolutely did not. They made comic books and action figures as if kids were gonna love this shit. They made a song and a music video. They created their own Subway meal deal.
It's for anyone who has a hearty appetite, or like my friend here, comes from France.
They put so many eggs into this cone-shaped basket, even though, and I cannot wrap my head around this movie came out 14 years after the last Coneheads appearance on SNL. Wayne's World was made at the height of popularity for those characters, and Coneheads was like, oh hey, remember that thing we used to do 2 decades ago? We should turn that into a very expensive sci-fi comedy. And if you can believe this, it did not go as well as they hoped. The best thing about Coneheads is that it's filled with a bunch of really funny cameos. Phil Hartman and John Lovitz are great. I love Adam Sandler's character in this, even though he's only in one scene. Tim Meadows' appearance lasts all of 4 seconds, but what an incredible 4 seconds it is.
I am prepared to fight for my honor.
So I feel like I can understand what they might have been going for, where you take these weirdo characters and have them move through a world you've populated with familiar faces, but my God, these might just be the worst main characters I've ever seen in a movie. I don't like the things that they do. I don't like the things that they say. I feel uncomfortable looking at them, and I find their way of life to be an affront on my traditional American values.
Sorry about that. I don't know why I got so heated yesterday.
I watched the movie again with a clear head, and I think I've come full circle. I love the Coneheads now. Once my body stopped being in fight or flight mode, I found there's actually a few things here that I appreciate. I like that the humans in this movie don't notice that the Coneheads are aliens. No one seems concerned about their giant weird heads. They'll just describe them as being tall, or in the case of Jason Alexander's character, they'll be like, you know, I struggled with baldness once too. So instead of having a bunch of sarcastic side characters constantly undercutting the premise, there actually ended up being this sincerity to the movie that I grew to like the more it went on. I think it's sweet how Chris Farley is just so in love with their daughter. I like these 3 as a family. I actually think it would have been pretty heartwarming if it wasn't extremely unpleasant to look at most of the time.
I love you, Mom.
And I also don't want to just make fun of this movie because it has a weird premise. I like the ambition it has. I like when comedies make a big swing, even if it ends up as more of a miss. And even with all the small parts, there's not a single bad performance in this movie. Everyone is 100% committed. And that's what you need when a movie's premise is a little bizarre. You need everyone on screen to be bought into the world so you can buy into it too. If I could pick 3 things that have kept this movie from becoming more of a cult classic, it would be that number 1, and I don't mean to harp on this, some of the scenes are just grotesque. I want to enjoy the joke that's being told here, but my body is actively recoiling from the nightmare fuel I've been subjected to. Number 2, the sci-fi elements, particularly in the final act where they go back to their home planet, are the weakest part of the film by far. It's a lot more fun to see their dynamic as outsiders on Earth and the juxtaposition of that than it is to see them fighting like a CGI Gorlak. And number 3, it just needed to be like 10% funnier. There's not really any iconic scenes or super quotable lines. The only thing I ever heard make its way into public vernacular was calling your mom and dad your
parental units.
My dad used to say that a lot when I was growing up, and I assume he got it from this. But if quotability is the longevity test for a comedy movie, Coneheads doesn't make the grade. Wait, why didn't I put this on at the beginning of the review? After such a promising start, SNL movies were already beginning to nosedive. But what happened the following year would surpass even the lowest possible expectations. A movie so bad it has the rare honor of scoring a 0% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a number that is coincidentally the same percentage of its budget that it earned back. It was a flop. It was a flaming pile of garbage. It was Pat. But is this movie truly as bad as people say it is? Yes, and I'll tell you all about it after this short commercial break.
Hi, I can't figure out how to get this cone off my head, and I'm here to tell you about today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. At this point, you know what a VPN is. It stands for Virtual Private Network, encrypts the information that passes between your devices and the internet. It's great for security, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi, blah, 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 you know the drill. The main reason I've been using VPNs for years now is because of how much of the internet it unlocks for you. You can use ExpressVPN to change your virtual location to one of over 100 different countries and make other apps and websites think that that's where you are. Why is this beneficial? For a few reasons. Like maybe Lady Gaga's new album is about to drop and you want to pretend to be a New Zealander for a few hours so you can listen to it before everyone else in America does? Great, now you're there. Or maybe there's a movie you want to watch on Netflix that isn't available in your country but is in a different one? No problem, now you're there. It used to take weeks for man to navigate the globe, and now he can do it with just one click. And a subscription to ExpressVPN, which coincidentally I happen to have a promo code for. What are the odds of that? Find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on the screen, clicking the link down in the description box, or heading to expressvpn.com/Drew. There's more to the internet than you could possibly imagine, so why don't we go see it all together? Thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring today's video. For those of you who don't know, Pat was an androgynous character played by Julia Sweeney on SNL for many years in the early 90s. The joke of these sketches was how close people would get to figuring out what gender Pat was, but it always remaining ambiguous.
Pat, would you say you were more like your mother or your father?
I'm a perfect combination of both.
And I think it's pretty easy to point at this and be like, whoa, that didn't age well. You couldn't make a joke like that these days because of whoa. And I feel like that's a little bit of a disingenuous way of looking at this. It's an important distinction to make that Pat was not meant to be like a non-binary person that everyone else is making fun of for being the way that they are. Pat is supposed to be either a man or a woman, and the joke was always more from the vagueness of Pat's answers to the questions that people would ask.
I think Pat is a happy-go-lucky person who is either a man or a woman. We just don't know which it is, and who cares? That was the original idea.
Yeah, it is. When you step back, like I see that.
Would SNL make a character like this today? Almost definitely not. But I don't think that means that we should retroactively decide that this came from a place of hate. If anything, the lesson here is to just mind your own business and stop worrying so much about how other people live their lives. And when you think of it that way, you could almost say that it's aged well. The sketches, not the movie. The movie is hot garbage. It's Pat starts as any good movie should, inside a vagina. Then baby Pat gets dropped on its head and that iconic theme song begins to play. It's time for androgyny. Oh boy, I can't wait. I can't wait to see 87 minutes of the same joke over and over again.
I crushed my nuts. There goes my afternoon snack.
Is that a banana in your pocket, or are you just happy to see?
It's a banana.
I love to stroke your pussy, cat.
Are you a brother or a sister?
Well, I'm an only child. That's my joke. That's my joke. That's my joke. Dude looks like a lady. Dude looks like a lady.
Anything charming from the sketches is worn so thin by how relentlessly they beat it over your head.
Dude looks like a lady.
The jokes about misunderstanding things, the laugh Pat makes after every line. There had to have been like 100 chuckles in this movie, and none of them were from me. My favorite thing about It's Pat is ironically also the thing that makes it a terrible movie, and it's that Pat is kind of a piece of shit. Selfish, overconfident, never stops to self-reflect. It's an archetype that I kind of like in a comedy, someone who's so far up their own ass that they don't even realize how shitty they're being.
Every time I look in your front window, I notice the clock on your VCR is blinking. Oh. I could fix that for you in a jiffy.
Okay, if you want to.
Well, I can't do it right now. I have to come back when it's convenient for me.
But that can't be the main character, especially not in a movie where you're expecting us to root for them. I don't want good things to happen to Pat. I want Pat to spontaneously combust. Pat falls in love with Chris, another person of indeterminate gender, and I do kind of like the theatrics of their meet cute, followed by them bonding over the most generic things imaginable.
Oh, do you know what I especially love? Are good movies.
You're kidding. I love good movies too.
You know what I hate? Are bad, boring movies.
Me too.
But then I soon realized that Pat's awfulness also extends to Chris. I was hoping it would be more us against the world and less Pat against every person they come into contact with. And the dynamic can be funny sometimes. My favorite line in the whole movie is when Chris is disappointed to find out Pat has gotten fired from yet another job. And Pat's like, hey, I've worked 23 jobs this year. How many jobs have you had?
Just the one.
Yeah, so I wouldn't exactly say you're some kind of job expert. That style of humor is right up my alley. That's a great line. But it certainly doesn't make me like Pat. I started to hate them more and more as the movie went on, to the point that by the end, I was kind of hoping Chris would tell Pat to eat shit, because Chris is likable. Chris deserves so much better, but no.
I realized that you need me.
The two of them live happily ever after, I guess. The biggest freak in this movie, though, is Pat's neighbor, Kyle. Kyle is obsessed with Pat from the moment he lays eyes on them. It's an addiction that takes over his life, ruins his marriage. I gotta know what's going on down there. I gotta read that diary. Pat said the password to it is somewhere in the dictionary, so I guess I'll just try every word in alphabetical order until I crack the code. Props to Charles Rocket for giving as much to this movie as he did. It was not worthy of such an energetic performance, but he delivered one nonetheless. Their whole will they, won't they see each other naked dynamic is, I guess, the main plot of the movie, and it culminates in Pat falling off a rafter, getting pantsed by a piece of machinery, and unveiling what I can only assume is a massive bush in front of a crowd of adoring fans. Now, It's Pat is easily the worst movie I've talked about so far, but believe it or not, I don't think it's even the worst movie on this list. While the next two certainly don't commit as many atrocities as It's Pat did, they do something even worse. They're boring as hell. Up next, Stuart Saves His Family, starring Al Franken, the former U.S. senator who resigned from office in 2017 and has spent the past 8 years telling everyone how much he regrets it. That's a little random. Al Franken was a writer and occasional performer for the first 20 years of SNL, but left the show in 1995 to focus on his acting career. Stuart Saves His Family would be the last movie he ever starred in. Going into this video, this is a SNL movie that I knew the least about, and now having watched it 1.5 times, because on my first attempt I got too high and had to go to bed, I feel like I know exactly as much as I did before. I don't know, I think I'm usually pretty good at paying attention to stuff, but there's something about the cadence of this film that was actively encouraging me to dissociate. It's like when you're reading a book and you realize for the past 2 pages you haven't actually absorbed anything, so you go back and reread them only to end up zoning out again. That's how I felt during this entire movie. It seemed like there were jokes happening, I just didn't get any of them.
If this is what they teach you in those 12-step or 13-step or 14 or whatever.
It's 12 steps.
Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to keep track.
It gave the impression of something that was well acted and competently produced, but like gun to my head, I couldn't tell you anything that happened in this movie, and I watched it an hour ago. It wasn't funny or cringy or good or terrible, it just kind of played on the TV and then it was over. I'm really sorry if you only made it this far in this video because you were dying to hear my opinion on Stuart Saves His Family. I just don't have one. And I tried so hard to. You guys know how much I like having opinions. After 2 catastrophic box office failures, NBC badly needed a win. So what do you do when your back's against the wall and you just need to see one go through the net to get your confidence back? Nostalgia-driven reboot, of course. And it worked! Blues Brothers 2000 made more money than the previous 2 movies combined. The problem is those 2 movies combined didn't even make $1 million, so that's not really saying much. This movie was always going to be an uphill battle because of the giant shoes they needed to fill after the death of John Belushi, but it feels like he took all the energy with him. This is a joyless, tired rehash of the original formula, with one of its stars missing and the other seeming like he didn't want to be there. God, what a miserable Dan Aykroyd performance. It's like he's trying to do an impression of his original character, but doesn't quite remember how to do it.
Just what is it that you do exactly?
His line delivery was more natural in Coneheads, and he was an alien in that movie. But I don't want to just single him out. Everyone in this is giving the worst acting performance of their life. John Goodman adds so little to this movie that I almost forgot he was in it.
She's a 130-year-old voodoo witch who eats people.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
There's so many line readings that are distractingly flat.
Hey man, don't worry about it. We're gonna smoke them turkeys.
Hey man, don't worry about it. We're gonna smoke them turkeys.
And I know not all of these people are actors, but you can't give a bunch of lines to people who aren't actors and expect them to perform it well.
Hey fellas, I think I know that voice.
Whatever charm the original had is nowhere to be found, and neither is any of the absurdism. Occasionally, it would dip into some of the weirdness that I liked so much from the first one, but it was so rare. This is truly one of the most boring movies I've ever watched. I could not wait for it to end. And when it's bad, it's so bad. Like, roll your eyes unfunny, screaming the punchline at you over and over again, just in case you didn't see it. I did chuckle one time when Dan was listing the names of blues legends, and there were a couple that were kind of funny.
Little Walter, Big Walter, Sonny Boy Williamson 1 and 2.
And I once again enjoyed the comically over-the-top police car pileup, but that's not even a new thing. They're just doing the same joke from the first one, but a little bit different and for longer. The only redeeming quality of this movie is that some of the songs are good, but they hardly ever come in at a time that makes sense. The pacing is so inconsistent. Anytime I'd start to get at all invested in what they were setting up, they just start singing again, usually for no reason.
You know what I mean when I say respect.
And I know you might be thinking, yeah, Drew, that's what a musical is. And you're not wrong. I guess I just didn't give a shit about anything that was happening, so the endless onslaught of songs just felt like a waste of time. It started to feel pretty ridiculous by the end, so I went back and counted. For 57 minutes of this movie, someone is singing. That is too much. If I wanted to listen to music for an hour, I would go listen to music for an hour. I came here to watch a movie, and this movie sucks. Luckily for my sanity, the worst run of SNL movies ended with Blues Brothers 2000, and the next few are actually pretty solid. I think Night at the Roxbury and Superstar have a lot in common. They made a very similar amount of money, they both received the same slightly above average reception, and they both feature Molly Shannon playing someone who is obsessed with Will Ferrell's character, which works both times because they have the chemistry to pull it off. Night at the Roxbury might be the most successful attempt at recreating the thing that made Wayne's World work, where yes, it's a story about a dumb idiot, but there's two dumb idiots, so it's actually kind of endearing. Like, I don't think I'd like either of these two people individually, but because they always see the best in each other, I feel like I can too.
We're good looking?
We're very good looking. You especially.
Thanks.
I know Chris Kattan didn't go on to have much of a film career, but he's really good in this. I think his relationship with the phone operator might have been my favorite thing in the movie. And I love this version of Will Ferrell. I think he's always been at his best when he's playing a character that has this childlike joy to them. It's just so infectious to watch.
Oh my God, Doug, this is the most amazing place I've ever been.
Guys, this is the Coke Club's in here.
Of all the movies that were released between Coneheads and MacGruber, this is definitely the one I laughed at the most, and I think the only one I would even consider watching again.
I love this song. Me too.
Actually, I'm getting kind of sick of it.
And I didn't think it was funny the first few times this guy asked everyone if they had just grabbed his ass, but as he kept asking people who were further and further away from him, then I liked it.
Dewey, did you just grab my ass?
Sir, from where I'm standing, that's a physical impossibility.
I know your tricks, Dewey.
Mr. Zadir, Dewey just called from Pismo Beach. He says there's no way he could have grabbed your ass.
I just had to see what they were building to. Almost exactly 1 year later came the release of Superstar, which you probably know as being what comes up when you Google, what is the movie where the girl sniffs her armpits? It's this one. This is the movie where the girl sniffs her armpit. I liked Superstar just a little bit less than Night at the Roxbury, but I definitely still enjoyed it. Unlike half of the characters we've been subjected to thus far, this one is actually suited for a feature-length film. I adore Molly Shannon. I think she's one of the most underrated cast members from SNL, especially as a physical comedian. The way she moves in this is so funny. And it's nice to see her in a starring role when I've really only ever seen her as side characters in like The Other Two and the movie I talked about 30 seconds ago. Like pretty much every film on this list, the worst parts were when it felt like they were just recycling jokes from the sketches, but there were a few details that made me laugh. I like when they refer to Will Ferrell's character as
the best guy dancer in the school.
In this Catholic school that's constantly doing very specific fundraisers. So you'll see a giant sign in the background that just says chocolate bars for Bosnia.
Good to see you. Out walking for scoliosis again.
Gotta go jog for glaucoma.
After school, Mary works as the Blockbuster Rewind girl, which is funny to think of just as a job, but it's also funny in the way it informs her character. Working here means she's always referencing other movies she's watched a little bit of in reverse. I also like the detail of Mary's grandmother forbidding her from dancing because that's how her parents died.
I thought you said that Mom and Dad were savagely ripped apart and eaten by a school of hammerhead sharks.
I just told you that to make you feel better.
Someone accidentally sped up the record player during a performance, so they had to dance faster, and then they danced so fast they fell down and got trampled. The scary thing is, it could happen to anyone. She does finally try out for the talent show and nails it, but then the bully dumps a bucket of paint on her head. And I love that when she finds out she passed the audition, their only caveat is they want you to lose the end with the paint, as if that was part of the performance. I don't know, I thought it was kind of funny. I really like the way this is directed. There's some smooth transitions, and it definitely looks like a movie, which I know doesn't sound like high praise, but a lot of movies don't look like movies, so you got to appreciate it when they do. And underneath the humor, there is kind of a sweet story here about learning to love yourself and doing something scary because it makes you feel good, not because you're trying to impress someone else, even if he is the best guy dancer in school. It's a good lesson. I just think maybe it would have hit a little bit harder if every high schooler in this movie wasn't clearly 30 years old. In 2000, SNL released its fourth film in 3 years, The Ladies' Man. And I gotta say, this might be the fastest I've grown tired of a titular character so far.
Hey, what's happening? This is Leon Phelps. You got The Ladies' Man.
Hello, ladies, man.
Ooh, it's a lady.
Tim Meadows is great in everything he does, but this is not a character that I want to watch for an hour and a half.
Listen, this is what you should do. Go to the bus station or to a bowling alley and hang out with no underpants.
When you're really, truly in love, you will feel it deep down in your pants.
Man, I like to take a bite out of your butt. Do it in the butt.
Doing it doggy style. It is the fault of the wang.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say this character works better in short bursts and doesn't have the depth needed to be stretched out over the entire length of a movie. Well, this would certainly be my first time thinking that in this video. This movie weirdly has the same problem as It's Pat, where it expects you to root for this guy but doesn't give you any reasons to. It drove me crazy to see this woman let him continually drag her down. The only nice thing he does for her the entire movie is trick her ex-boyfriend into eating human shit. No, I did not make that up. That is a real thing that happens. Now, can I blame Tim Meadows for wanting to write a movie about how no woman can resist him because he's so good at fucking? Of course not. In fact, I honestly kind of respect it. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. Here are 3 things I did laugh at. I like the sign outside this Christian radio station that says, "Thou shall not part." I liked the random musical number they did in the middle. Time has come to kill the ladies' man. And I laughed really hard at the way Will Ferrell holds this gun at the end. What The Ladies' Man did do is serve as the final straw for SNL Studios. After nearly a decade of movies that ranged from, at best, mild financial successes to, at worst, giant embarrassing failures, their run of cinematic excursions mercifully came to a halt. And for the past 25 years, Saturday Night Live has stayed on television where it belongs. Oh, that is except for one movie, the critically acclaimed 2010 smash hit MacGruber! I'm gonna say something a little controversial here. MacGruber is my favorite SNL movie, and it's honestly not even close. I was worried that rewatching it for this video, I would realize it wasn't that funny anymore, but no. I love it just as much. I'm sure part of it is the soft spot I have for this era of SNL because I was a teenager at the time and everyone's favorite SNL cast is the one from when they were in high school. But god damn it, I love Kristen Wiig. I love Will Forte. I think he's so underappreciated. It's not often you could say a performer is truly one of a kind, but that's how I feel about him. The very specific type of energy he brings, his unwavering commitment to every bit, in both his timid awkwardness and sudden extreme outbursts, it never feels like he's doing an impression of someone else. It feels like he's created a style of comedy that is completely unique to him. Now, MacGruber is the kind of character I described earlier, the stupid asshole who's cockier than he has any right to be.
I think it's fairly obvious. He was going to use it to buy the pass.
Passcodes, yep. Got there at the same time, maybe even slightly before you.
But I think the reason I like it so much in this movie is because bad things keep happening to him as a result. He's constantly making things worse for himself, and that's funny to see for someone who has a giant ego. The way he's not attracted to Vicky at all until he sees her dressed exactly like him.
What? You just look really pretty.
Thank you.
The way he has to beg for Piper's forgiveness just moments after treating him like garbage. There's so many scenes in this movie that made me cry from laughter the first time I watched it. When he's coaching Vicky through an earpiece how to act like him since she's supposed to be undercover and she feels so bad about it.
No, Vicky, no tip. What are you doing? Get that tip back.
I have to. Sorry.
No, say you're not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
When you think he's about to jump in front of Piper, but he's actually just using him as a human shield.
How did you know I was wearing a bulletproof vest?
You're wearing a bulletproof vest?
I also think this movie is edited better than any of the others on this list.
Oh, you're loco, man. I mean, look.
The music cues, the perfect timing of every cut.
I'm in.
What?
I'm in.
Watching this movie when I was 18 and thinking it was the funniest shit ever, and then seeing how much everybody seemed to hate it, made me feel two things. One, that I don't understand what people aren't seeing in this. How did all the same people who seem to love movies like The Hangover and Bridesmaids and 21 Jump Street, all these similar comedies from that era, go and see this one and just feel nothing? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I never felt so out of place in this world. At the same time though, I think it made me love the movie even more. There's something special about things that feel like they're tuned to your exact frequency, like they're speaking a language only you can understand. When you find a movie like that, especially at the right age, it makes it feel like it belongs to you. Sure, it has flaws, but those flaws only make your bond stronger. When you look back at a lot of comedies from the past few decades, there's almost always a disconnect between the critics and the audience. I feel like there became this growing sentiment that comedy movies are pointless. It doesn't matter if they're hilarious, if the story doesn't blow you away, so now they're just packaged into other genres. Superhero movies that lean comedic, family movies that are a little bit funny, rom-coms that have more rom than com. But what happened to all the weird shit? What happened to just stringing together a bunch of loosely connected series of bits? It's been 15 years since MacGruber, and no other sketch has managed to make it back to the big screen. So I guess that leads us to the question of, will there ever be another SNL sketch turned movie? And I honestly don't think so, for a few reasons. One, the way the show operates now is different. It's a lot less character-based than it used to be. It seems like they rarely do recurring sketches anymore. Like, they'll occasionally revisit ideas, but they're not usually centered around just putting one character in different situations. Could they do a Peacock movie about Domingo? Sure, there's always a chance. Could they have done something with that Kate McKinnon character who was always getting abducted by aliens? Probably. And if they wanted to go the Coneheads route of revisiting something from 15 years ago, I feel like a lot of people would be on board for a Stefan spinoff. But does that mean it would be good? Is one funny character enough to carry the entire length of a movie? Usually not. And maybe it just took Lorne 11 tries to realize that. But then there's also the way comedy movies in general have evolved. As Matt Damon famously explained on Hot Ones that one time, the death of DVD sales has made it so the budget of every movie is either very high or very low, with almost nothing in between. And a lot of these old comedies that were in that middle ground of like 20 to 40 million are hard for studios to justify anymore because it's almost impossible for them to make that money back. So they just don't even try. I mean, outside of bottoms. I can't really think of too many straight up comedies that have had a theatrical release the past few years. And even that one, which to me seemed like it had a decently significant cultural impact, profited $1 million. So I guess for studios, it's like, okay, best case scenario, I make an almost unnoticeable profit. Worst case scenario, I set a bunch of money on fire. Why would I take that risk? I'll tell you why. Because the world needs more MacGrubers.
And Coneheads. And Stuart saves his family. Actually, I think we're good on that one.
Now, there have been some SNL adjacent movies over the years, and a lot of these have been really good. Three Amigos was written by Lorne during his time away from the show, and in my mind, that's a classic. I think Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping is criminally underrated. That is the funniest movie from the past decade, and I don't understand how it didn't catch on more. I also really liked the Peacock exclusive Please Don't Destroy movie that came out in 2023. Meg Stalter was fantastic every time she was on screen.
Did you hear that? John thinks the Grinch is scary too. It's like, yeah, just because it's Christmas doesn't mean he's not a monster.
Martin had this one scene I had to rewind like 4 times because I was laughing so hard.
What are you doing?
Oh, I'm allergic to walnuts.
Does Amy not know?
No, she thinks I love this salad. Fuck, you gotta start eating these, man.
Go, go, go! Hurry! You gotta go faster than I'm going, or else the pile just stays the same size.
There are still movies like this getting made, but a lot of them get buried on streaming services where some people watch them, but they certainly don't go on to have the big sweeping impact that comedies used to, where millions of people would go see them in theaters and then rent it on DVD, and it would change the way people talk to each other for years. That doesn't really happen anymore. But there's also certainly a positive way of looking at that. Like, isn't it better that more things are being made, even if they're seen by fewer people, than for fewer things to get made that are seen by more people? At the end of the day, I think everyone still has their own MacGruber. Even though it's probably not actually MacGruber, it's probably a different movie. Anyway, here's my definitive ranking of everything I watched for this video. If you can believe it, it's Pat. Not actually the worst SNL movie. In my opinion, just slightly less bad than Blues Brothers 2000. Don't get me wrong, they're both god-awful movies, but It's Pat is an hour shorter, so had to give the edge there. Feel free to yell at me down in the comments below if you disagreed with something I said. I'm all for civil discourse on this channel, because it boosts engagement whether I take the time to read it or not. All right, thanks for watching. Also, if you made it to the end of the video and you've always wanted to buy a t-shirt, but you just never knew where to do it, I've got great news for you. Everything on my merch site is on sale right now. This is gonna be the last chance to buy pretty much everything on here. I'm planning to start from scratch after this, and once these designs are gone, they're never coming back. Either way, I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next video where I reveal all of my most intimate secrets. Goodbye.